Hello and welcome to the next instalment of us building a dream residential recording studio in the southern Swedish countryside. This week it's mainly about the floor, amongst other interesting tidbits. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get started. Wish us luck. This barn has been emptied and filled so many times since we got this place. So the first mission was to move all of this crap out of here. Once the barn was cleared, we had the huge job of digging out all the concrete and stones so that we could level, insulate and pour the new concrete slab. I'm pretty happy with a jackhammer in my hand these days, so I just got to work, with help from dear Felix of course. And we kept on digging. At some point Elsa joined us. We filled another huge skip, probably around 15 tons or so. We've used more than 10 of those for these barns. So there was a big chunk of old wall sticking out from one side of the barn about halfway down. After a bit of archaeological digging, literally, I figured out was the original end wall of the barn in a previous life when it was a lot smaller. Which led me down the rabbit hole of the many lives of these amazing buildings. 100 years ago, this was quite a different place. The farmhouse was bigger, the gatehouse had a cellar, and there were 4 barns instead of 3. And they were in a different place, being in what is now our neighbour's field, just to the southwest of where they stand today. In 1923, the farmhouse was the first building in the village to get electricity. Very exciting until it ended up causing a fire which burned down all the buildings here and spread to some other buildings in the village. We even have photos of the aftermath. So they had to rebuild the whole place. The new farmhouse was a bit smaller, the gatehouse too, and for some reason they rebuilt 3 barns instead of 4 and put them in a different spot. But I don't think they rebuilt them all at the same time. I think they started with a smaller version of the big barn, which is why we had that old bit of wall sticking out. Then at some point they extended this barn, but also added a second barn. You can see that in the way that the old purlins and rafters are still visible at the junction between the 2 barns. And I think they added the restaurant barn last of all. One very interesting feature here is the old crane mechanism, which would have been used to move bags of seed and hay around the barns. You can see that at some point, in order to install that crane, they had to remove all the collar ties from in here, replacing them with these really nice little short angled struts to hold the roof up. And also removed all the joists which would have run down the big barn, attached by these metal brackets on the sides, and replaced them with these huge struts instead, you know, just so they could move stuff up and down with the crane. Which ironically brings us back to today, and one problem which I've had to overcome, or will have to overcome, in designing the control room and booth for the studio. These 2 struts are in the way. If we want to have decent isolation and acoustics in those rooms, we can't really have these huge beams sticking through at a weird angle. Yeah, it's not really going to work. So I've had a 400 kilo steel beam made, which at some point we have to raise up 4 meters, wrestle into position, get it above those stone walls and bolt it into the wooden frame of the barns so that we can take those 2 wooden struts out and basically put it back to how it was before. Anyway, back to the digging. It got a bit harder towards the middle of the barn. I think where the original barn floor was, it was just a bit chunkier and bigger stones and stuff. So I had to rent the little baby digger again to make it a bit easier on our limbs. And at some point, even the tractor made an appearance. There we go. That is all dug out. It wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad. Felix might disagree, but it wasn't so bad. And And now we are building the forms for the sides of the slab. So this is going to stop all the concrete and perlite flowing out, and it's going to leave us with a nice step into the studio. Same on the other side. And then we'll put the perlite down. What is perlite, you might ask? Well, it's a very lightweight, porous material derived from volcanic glass. It gets superheated and at some point it just pops like popcorn, trapping a lot of air bubbles inside and therefore becoming a really good insulator. So once you've dug out the whole subfloor, then you pour in a layer of around 20 centimetres of perlite and then pour the concrete slab on top. It's a good choice if you've got really uneven subfloors, you know, with a few stones in and stuff, because it kind of fills in all the gaps, it finds its own level, and then you've got a really nice, solid, level foundation to pour the slab onto. And here it is, being expertly modelled by the twins. So I needed to calculate where the big beam, the big metal beam is going to go. So I had to lay out the walls of the control room and the booth, and I've been messing around with these boards for a while and bags of perlite to simulate recording equipment, and I've got a pretty good setup now, I think. So this is going to be the booth and this will be the control room, which is pretty nice and big. Hard to see on the video probably, but when you come in through the entrance it'll be great. You'll see all the recording stuff and then you'll see the live room through the window beyond. I think it'll be pretty good. And then you can come in here and go through a door there into the booth. So now I need to build a big chunky concrete plinth right here, which is going to have a post on top of it, which is going to support the center of the big metal beam, which is going to go across here. So yeah, that's what I'm doing now. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to run a whole load of cable conduit under the floor, just to make wiring the studio way easier later on. Here I am hammering in short lengths of rebar in order to tie the conduit into place. One nice touch is if you put a little plastic sleeve around the rebar pins, after the concrete slab's poured, you can easily pull the pin out and reuse it. And then the perlite, another winter wonderland. So the idea is that you pour in the perlite, level it off as best as you can, and then you lay landscape fabric and the steel mesh, which is going to be in the concrete. It's the kind of reinforcement for the concrete. You lay that on top of the perlite and you use that as a base to run a compactor over, because you need to actually squash the perlite down, make sure there's no air pockets or anything, and just get it nice and solid. Once that's done, then you've got a nice solid base to pour the concrete onto. Definitely do without the rain. At least it's not minus 15 this time. So there you have it. Incredibly happy to have finished the last of the barn floors. We worked out that it's something like 200 tons of concrete and stone that we've dug out of these buildings over the last year. Some of it using that little baby digger, but all of it using wheelbarrows and skips. Anyway, next time we tackle the roof of that big barn. more specifically the inside of the roof, the ceiling, all clad in beautiful timber from the local sawmill. So please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out. Thanks very much for watching. Look after each other, lots of love, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.